So, Dave Foster, EMEA brand manager at Blue Star. Have you got a tablet?
Yeah, I have two that I use at home.
Okay, good. How do you use it?
Mostly for portable sources of music, but I also have ebooks and documentation on there that I'll read.
Okay, good. Good for you. Leo Borgini, EMEA product manager at Zebra Technologies.
Good morning.
Have you got a tablet?
I do. Frankly speaking, when in 2010, the first, let's say, tablet product of a famous brand was introduced, was presented to the main public, I thought, what a weird concept. And then, of course, 1 year later, I bought one. And since then, I've been using this tablet for, surfing the web, listening to music, of course, watching videos, reading ebooks, documentation. And of course, I shouldn't say that, but to keep also my daughter busy when we cannot entertain her in any other way.
That's the biggest use of the iPad, absolutely. So you're an early adopter of technology, that's for sure. That's good for today, okay? Because today we are going to be addressing one of the, let's say, biggest opportunities that we see in the market. We are going to be talking on, let's say, a very specific part of the mobile solutions within the digital evolution of the workplace. It's the tablets, and we feel it's an opportunity. But you know what? Every time we look at data and marketing sites about tablets, we see that the market is getting smaller and smaller. So what the hell are we doing here?
It is true that, let's say, after, for example, the big tablet product introduction that we are probably all familiar with in our head in 2010. From 2010 to 2015, 2016, the tablet sales kept on growing. And then since then, if you look at the business news, business reports say tablet sales are declining. And it has been the feedback has been more or less from the business report has been pretty much this one for the last 6 or 7 years. The problem is that this trend applies to consumer tablets because of a number of reasons, that users do not refresh their tablets every year, or maybe now we have the concept of phablets, no? Yes. Let's say that phones become bigger and bigger, closer to tablets, so a number of users are maybe switching to that category of devices. But, let's say when we think about tablets for industry use, that's a completely different thing. So
So tell me, you're talking about this difference between consumer and rugged. Probably we can address that later on to make this more specific. But where do you see the biggest opportunities? In fact, it's not where do you see the opportunities, it's where you, as an expert in the market, as a key player, where are you experiencing those opportunities?
Well, overall, I would say that if we look at the global picture, let's say rugged tablets for industry use have been growing about close to 5% on a worldwide base year after year. In EMEA, we are closer probably to a 4% rather than a 5%, but growing constantly and steadily. This is, let's say, as a big picture. Then if there are some specific verticals that where really tablets are really finding more and more their way into the market. And for example, if we think at verticals, at specific segments such as manufacturing, transportation and logistics, retail, services, all of these segments indeed have been growing between 15 and 25% every year. And they are supposed, if we look at the industry data, reference industry data, the VDC data that we all use in our industry, these are supposed to grow more or less at this pace in these segments that I mentioned. On top of, there are other segments, other verticals that are developing nicely. For example, healthcare, that are supposed to.
So tablets, Dave, at the end, I think we can conclude that, of course, that tablets are not dead, right? Tablets are a real opportunity in this moment.
Yeah, it's very true. When you just have to walk down the modern high street, and using retail as a kind of start point, you see more and more use of tablets across both store frontage and in the hospitality sector.
Correct.
For order taking, etc. So there's definitely, when always confuse me when they're like, tablets on the decline. And when you see them more and more, it just doesn't kind of ring true.
No, but I think with Leo said, sorry, go on, please.
No, I think, and the interesting thing is that, if we want to answer the question, why tablets? are making really their way in these verticals, I think probably the broad answer would be, because they are increasing productivity, efficiency in any of these sectors that we mentioned. But the interesting thing is that really this increase in productivity and efficiency is declined in many different ways, in all these verticals. For example, and it can be, related to, for example, going to the direction of digitization of services, going paperless in a number of industry warehouses, services. It can be about, expanding the omnichannel concept in retail. It can be about a force multiplier, for example, in government and healthcare.
Yeah, that's interesting. Every use case is kind of
exactly
unique. So for me, I think we need to kind of identify what we're talking about. What type of device are we addressing here? Because tablets, when, if you're just an average consumer user, you think of it as an internet browser, somewhere to, maybe use online shopping, those kind of things. But obviously the uses are very different in business, and maybe we should probably decide what we're talking about.
Yeah, because you're right. I mean, I think we all have in mind what a tablet is, but I mean, probably not every one of our, let's say, customers, may see the real difference between some of those units and the ones that they might be needing to create that opportunity in the market, So let's go back in the history. The first tablet was back in the 80s or something like that, and then also the first iPad was in 2010, around that year. So it's not something which is relatively new. So what makes a difference? I think that's the key element. What makes a difference between the consumer tablets and the tablets that are really representing this growth in the market nowadays, right?
I think if we need to define a tablet here, there are two elements that we need to consider. I mean, in the, let's say, technical definition of a tablet, and one is definitely portability and mobility. It is definitely one of probably the key elements that has been emerging since, the year that you mentioned, 2010, that probably was not evident in the 80s or when the first concept appeared. And the other one, is the tablet. By definition, it's a broad category, because the second element we define tablet is typically the screen size,
Correct.
And the screen size of a tablet nowadays goes from 6.8, 6.9, because before that's tablet, there are the phablets, as we mentioned, up to 12, 14 inches. And after that, there are the laptops. Laptops are also maybe sometimes 13 or 14 inches. So let's say it's something which is something in between two categories, and which is also, spans a full range of devices, which different options, different features inside these categories, I think. And then, of course, to the discussion that we are holding today, we need to add the concept of rugged tablets, because that's what we are talking about today for, also with the example of Zebra products. And when we talk about rugged tablets, the third element that we need to add to this definition is really, there is a total cost of ownership, that we need to consider here.
Correct.
So, for example, we need to compare, let's say, the cost over the life cycle of the product versus, let's say, the upfront investment only. We need to consider, let's say, that, if you buy a tablet for productivity and efficiency, you are supposed to use this device most of the time without any downtime. So you are offered, you can benefit of a service contract, for example, that gives you a backup option when this tablet can have some downtime issue. Let's say, so total cost of ownership, of course, is one of the key benefits, let's say, of these rugged tablets. I think one of the other elements that we can mention is that rugged tablets, compared to consumer tablets, typically are designed with a wider range of accessories in mind, which are considered really starting from the very first, let's say, product definition. They are part of the product development,
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's what alters. We talked about a number when we were introducing the subject. We talked about a number of different use cases, and I think realistically that it's the device range. So the tablet itself can be the same tablet, but it's the accessories you combine it with that change the way that the end user interacts with that device. And that's really, like you said, for me, that's also the key difference, is that you're not relying on third-party holders or cradles or charging solutions, that these rugged tablets are designed with all of these things from the ground up. It's not an afterthought. It's part of that solution.
And I think that's a key element, Dave, because I mean, I think that's also where the modern companies, are really looking at. I mean, this is a complete different approach, and that also defines the, let's say, also the return of investment of this technology. Correct. So the modern companies are looking to this in a complete different way, as the companies that in the past has been introducing different kinds of technologies.
Yeah, I would say that's very true. If you look at Apple, for example, other tablet manufacturers are available, obviously, but use Apple as an example. They just design, like, so it's the iPad 12 or it's the iPad Air. Those are all just the next evolution of almost identical product. The design space is virtually identical. It's just bigger. Maybe it has the retinal scanner or a more high capacity battery. Whereas modern rugged tablet designers like Zebra are thinking, right, what do my end users want these for? And they take those requirements and then they design devices and accessory portfolios that match that requirement. You're no longer taking a device and figuring out how to use it. You're taking, what does this device need to do, and making a device that way.
And if I can add one thing here, it is true. I mean, this is absolutely one key point. On the other side, I have to say that, in the product development stage, we always take into account a number of accessories, because we envision a number of use cases to accompany the trend that we see on the market. On the other side, the market always surprises us. Our users are always very creative. Also, taking into account that tablet is by definition a device which is flexible. So, of course, we have a number of accessories that we have envisioned and developed in home, but we cannot stop, of course, our third-party partners to develop dedicated, specific accessories later to cover some other use cases that emerge really over the life cycle of the device, when users learn also to use the device in the most appropriate way, to fit the use case.
You're also talking about different kinds of uses, different kinds of verticals, and I think it's also wise to say that Zebra, it's also kind of one-stop shop for, let's say, for tablets. It's not only those rack tablets, that you use in the warehouse, but you're also mentioning that you're also in other kind of verticals. So I would like to really drive the attention into probably the main one of those opportunities, which is retail. Retail is a big market, is a very dynamic market, very much impacted also by the consumer. Or by the use of consumer solutions, also because it's one of those areas that we all act as a player, not in the warehouse. I'm not in a warehouse, but I'm every day in 10 different kinds of stores. So Zebra, coming from especially from these solutions in the warehouse, in the industry, etc., has adapted very, very strong into that environment. So I want to step into retail. Where do you see the biggest use of tablets and so the biggest opportunity for that?
I think broadly, if we look at specifically at how the retail environment is changing today, and if, for example, if we are looking at if we are designing a tablet for retail, how should this tablet be? Well, there are three key elements, three key concerns, let's say, that we have identified according, for example, for our latest industry reports at Zebra about the retail world. So one key, probably the number one key element which is brought as, concern and direction for investment from retail manager is, we need to give any employee, all our personnel, greater visibility on real-time inventory, improve inventory accuracy. This is always anonymously really considered as the number one priority. The second element that we are often reported, always according to what we see in the industry worldwide, is really the need probably of empowering the associates in retail. And what do I mean by this? According to our surveys that we run on the field, 2 out of 3 associates have the feeling in their daily job that consumers are more connected to the product informations than they are. maybe consumers that have been browsing product information.
You're talking about the omni-channel concept, like people is really searching for things, and they know much more about the product than before.
Exactly. And so let's say empowering, let's say, retail associates through some sort of tool is the, let's say, second big priority that we see. The third priority is what you were mentioning, really. Let's say accompanying, let's say building a full ecosystem of unified commerce, supporting the evolution of omni-channel retail, providing with more fulfillment options, with more purchase options to the customer. For example, let's say giving the option to the customer that comes to the store, okay, the product is not available, let's look together on my tablet here if the product is available in some other in some other stores of the chain, and let's deliver directly this product to your home. This way you have the customer happy, you sell the product to the customer instead of having the customer buying that from the competition, and basically you create an hybridization of all the channels, of all the retail channels, online and offline, around the user. This is probably the third trend that we are seeing in the industry data. So let's say when we design a tablet for retail, a tablet and its accessory ecosystem, I will say that all of these elements, at least all of these three key elements, need to be taken into account.
I think that's interesting as well. I think retail's probably the most unique environment because not only do you have the end user of the equipment to consider, but you have the consumer experience. Yeah. So that and those two things are they're not always aligned. So you have to think about what does the person who goes into the store to buy something want to see, and also what does the person who works in the store want to see. And I think we're seeing a shift in the age of the people that work in these spaces, and also the people that want to purchase in there, right? So if you were talking about the iPad was first introduced in 2010. So if you think about it now, that there are people who were between the ages of 11 and 16, so born in the early 2000s, Absolutely. That have had access to tablet technology in school from the ages of roughly 11 or so. And it's becoming more and more common. You see kids either are issued with tablets or they have access to them in their classrooms, and they are very comfortable in using this technology, much more so than people who, were probably growing up in the 90s when, PCs and green screens were the highest grade of technology we had access to.
No, but even for the people who was born before the 90s, but we are also existing a day for your information, it's also it really became a kind of useful tool, right? And then I think it's simply because it's easy to use. It also has got a wider screen, and that helps a lot in the introduction. So the adoption of this technology is much easier, which of course impacts not only the retail, but it goes across every single industry, not to mention field service, etc., that we will be addressing later on, right?
And if I can make one comment, it's very interesting. And now we're mentioning, let's say, tablets in retail. You have implicitly mentioned a tablet, of famous brand, I won't repeat that name, that basically is probably framing the kind of tablet concept that we expect for retail. Yeah. Because for retail, of course, the tablet device that we are going to deploy is very different from those concepts that we will see in warehousing, healthcare, government, etc., etc. Here we are talking for sure of a slim tablet concept, slim, elegant as well, because it must be nice to show in the shop, very lightweight because it must be handled by employees for 8-10 hours for the shift, and for example at Zebra we have launched recently a tablet, the 8040 and 45.
Correct.
Which is indeed finding its place to retail because it has been let's say envisioned with the retail use case in mind, and is more or less matching this concept and this use case.
But that's important, Leo, because when you mentioned this new tablet, the 8040, 45, what kind of need are you satisfying, in the market? When you develop something like that, it's because the market was asking for something.
Exactly. So the market was asking for something, and let's say the key trends, let's say, that we had in mind for retail were exactly the trends that I mentioned a few minutes ago. So, for example, providing better visibility on inventory, and we can imagine, for example, an employee using an 8-inch tablet, pretty much as a mobile computer, but with a bigger user interface, where maybe she or he can have more interactions to confirm and input data. Or maybe we can imagine about, we can imagine store associates having a slightly bigger tablet, 10-inch, but let's say to do some assisted sales, to show some items and assist, the customers, for example, in placing an order for an item, or, looking for the exact SKU that they want. Or maybe to use this, once again, this 10-inch tablet for some let's say, queue busting application, for example, to speed up the checkout, something like that. Or, once again, I think talking about the third element that I had mentioned previously, so let's say the trend towards omni-channel, hybridization of channels, thinking also of letting the end users and letting the consumers play themselves in store, interact with the tablet user interface themselves in store through, for example, some sort of self-service kiosk, and that's why, for example, for this tablet, we have developed specific accessories that allows this kind of wall or desktop installations.
That's interesting, because I was going to talk about that. So you say that allowing the actual consumers themselves to utilize the tablet. What's to stop that consumer walking out of the store and taking the tablet away with them, if you're allowing them to have access to it?
Well, let's say that, normally, for example, in the third use case that I mentioned, for the kiosk, station kiosk accessories, most of these kiosks have locked configuration. So basically, the tablet is locked inside.
Right, okay.
For other, let's say, use cases, for example, when the tablets are supposed to be not installed on a fixed location, something that we have anyway, locking cradles. We have intelligent cabinets where, for example, the person of the store can lock the tablet when they do not use it longer during their shift, and so the tablet is secure there and basically protected from any attempt of stealing that.
Because I think that's a good point, actually. And you were talking about kiosks. And I guess we can, because we talk about the definition of a kiosk, right? Because for me, when someone says kiosk, I envisage like a fixed installation. But I guess we're talking about more of a self-service kind of position.
I think addressing that is very interesting. So let me make you a question. Kiosk is an emerging market, and it's also a niche, a very important niche. And honestly, I don't think most of our customers are identifying kiosks as an opportunity also for tablets. So I need some more explanation there, if you're so kind.
Absolutely. I agree with you. Kiosks is an emerging opportunity. We mentioned the use case in retail, but we could argue that, for example, in hospitality, the opportunity is even bigger, no? Because just it's let's say it's a tool that lets the user manage the check-in, manage independently the check-in into a structure. We could argue that, for example, in transportation, the use case can also be big. We can argue, for example, that in healthcare, potentially the kiosk as a way of checking into the healthcare infrastructure is also a big opportunity. I think this is also related to the point that you were making about the age of the users, and they're being more and more used to this kind of interfaces,
It's paperless, right? That's
exactly
that kind of
exactly.
sums up
Exactly.
the trend. It's that removal of physical documentation in favor of cloud storage or local applications that replicate that traditional pen and paper, sign here, here's your room key kind of, or here's your appointment card, or even here's your room key in hotels is an interesting example. I was at where I think it was a Zebra event earlier this year, and one of the automated check-in devices was a kiosk, and it actually encoded your room card as part of that. So it gave, obviously inside there's some kind of MyFair encoder that digitally encoded the signal onto the card. So it's interesting, and I think I kind of fell into the trap of assuming that by kiosk, that definition is like a fixed installation that you can't utilize in any other way, whereas actually what we're kind of talking about is a multi-use, a set of specific accessories designed to replicate that, where you could have a tablet fixed into a lockable cradle that is secure, allows customers to process any number of self-service, point of information activities, but actually if something within those accessories were to fail, for example the printer, because they're mechanical and have moving parts or consumable components, if that stops working, you can then unlock the tablet and use it for another purpose. It doesn't you're making better use of the investment in technology, which I hadn't really considered, that the same. And then so, for example, in a retail environment, you have a self-service checkout. People are scanning their things, making payments. At the end of the day, you want to do stock check. So you go to the self-service checkout, you unattach the tablet, pick up your either companion scanner or RFID reader, depending on what technologies you're using to manage stock, and use the same device to go around the store and check stock, which historically would be two very different sets of hardware for those use
absolutely.
cases.
And on top of this, from the service point of view, you are also talking of one SKU basically to manage.
That's true.
And which is an advantage, because in the end you are stocking one configuration for two very different use cases, for the kiosk one and for the tablet use case, which can be declined in number of flexible.
So that appeals to a different person in the organization, right? So you've got people whose job it is to manage the shop floor activities, but then you also have IT managers and infrastructure managers whose job it is to manage the estate of devices. And by restricting the number of types of device, that makes their life a lot easier. They're only worrying about one hardware configuration. It's one set of security or...
That is very true. That is very true, and it speaks by itself about the flexibility of the tablets, which is a key element into the tablets opportunity, I would say, right? But, we are talking about granting data and access, to a lot of employees, even customers. We are talking about the accessibility of this data as one of the elements that makes really a difference of using tablets or not. But let me tell you something. When you're giving data to customers, then the security also shows up, right? The security concerns, and I think this is really the moment to talk about those concerns that widely are commonly known by every user, and and how this trouble or these breaks could be broken.
Absolutely.
So talking about data, I think exposing data, it's the key element. How is that solved? How is the system nowadays, let's say, protecting you against that?
Let's say, I fully agree that security is a concern whenever we are giving a piece of the IT infrastructure to an employee, in the user. We are, let's say, exposing a piece of the IT infrastructure on the network, let's say. On the other side, let's say, first of all, and this is one of the elements that is also differentiating a rugged tablet from consumer tablets, I would say. On rugged tablets, we have a number of, let's say, recurring updates which are really intended to fix the security patches, and this over the life cycle of the device, not just for the 18 months or the 2 years as you find on the consumer tablets. On the other side, let's say, if we talk about let's say the protection of the data themselves. Let's say that I would say that very rarely, let's say, it would be quite infrequent to store sensitive data, to store the databases inside the tablet itself, because as of, the infrastructure, IT infrastructure that are built today, most of the data are stored some cloud infrastructure, or virtualized in some remote location, and really the tablet is just a tool to remotely access those data that are protected in a central location. So this is the number one thing. from the point of view of the user, I would say, not only the exposing data, but let's not forget, let's say, that the interface of the rugged tablet itself can be controlled. No, we have specific tools, of course, to lock the tablet interface, which is exposed to the employee or even to the end user, to those applications, those tools that we want to be there on one side. On the other side, we can also control, let's say, the access of users, employees to the different Play stores, because we might object, okay, maybe on a tablet which can be individually assigned to an employee that he can bring home, for example, after the end of the shift. Well, he can install on his personal profile.
Correct.
This is also one weapon that we have. On his personal profile, we can download application from the Google Store. But let's say when he's back at work, when he logs into the professional profile we use in the store, this is locked to those applications that are given to him. And there are many enterprise management tools, for example, NDM tools that allow to set up really
that's critical, because that is working also. That's a solution which is provided also by Google Android, and then we both, Zebra and Blue Star, we also have a good agreement with Google Android. We are competence center at the end, and this is also something critical, because it's not only affecting the tablets but also any kind of equipment which is working under Android, in your solutions or many other solutions from the market. So Display Protect, I think, is a key element to secure that the boss knows that the units, the devices they are putting there, they are only going to be used for the purpose they are being installed.
Exactly. 100%.
How about robbery? How about stealing the units? I mean, a tablet is something nice, and then, I remember in some countries, also, it could also be like, hey, I don't want to put this tablet there because, it's so attractive that people will end up just keeping them with them at home. Huh?
Yeah. So I think there's two aspects to that. Who are likely to want to steal a tablet? One is
me,
and a consumer, so someone who's just in the store.
Yeah.
So not employed by the company. They just see a tablet that's someone's maybe been asked a question by a customer and they've put the tablet down, so they can take it and take it, or the employees themselves. Sometimes if you're a particularly disgruntled employee, you might want to take that tablet and use it elsewhere. So there's the two aspects of that. One, I think the first one is that we talked about, if these tablets are placed into lockable cradles or locked solutions that are provided as part of the accessory portfolio, you can't do that. So they're there. The second one is you make the employee responsible for it. So you have a way to know who was the last person to log into it. Can you lock that device remotely? Can you, there's a whole bunch of kind of tracking solutions available for those type of devices. So I think publicizing that they have those solutions in place is, will also help that solution. So I think that there's if people want to steal something, they will obviously find a way. You could just have to reduce.
Don't make it easy.
Reduce the opportunity for those people. Yeah.
And there are solutions to the market. That's very interesting. Hey, I propose you now to step in some other verticals, that also might represent a good opportunity. The first one is warehousing. Warehousing. I think you mentioned before that you have been giving us some information that 20% of the facilities are having some kind of racked solution devices. But this is going to be, or this is expected to be rising up to 80%. In the coming years. So I think this is an angle, which we need to approach, because especially for Blue Star, a huge amount of our customers are really working in this environment. They might not have thought about tablet, or they might not see the opportunity compared to the other equipment. So let's talk a little bit about that. Is only about real-time access to data, or is there anything else than that?
Well, let's say real-time access to data, and let's say also the ability to update the data in real time is the key point here.
Yeah.
Let's say, especially considering the how big is the surface of typical warehouse. Let's say having a tool that helps the employee really to access and update real time something which is happening, or maybe having a tablet that allows also to document something which is an anomaly. For example, damaged goods. Take a picture with the tablet and send it to the cloud to store the information. That is the number one thing, let's say, in the warehousing environment. Then there are, let's say, some, more specific opportunities, some of migration to tablets, something that let's say, some trends that are happening under our eyes. And one, for example, one of these trends is, for example, we cannot deny that it's happening. Some migration from specific dedicated forklift in-vehicle computers to in-vehicle tablets installed. We know that for years in-vehicle computers have been used and they have a reputation because they have an excellent level of performance, they have a low failure rate, but for some specific use cases, and there are some clear-cut really use cases, where really tablets have an advantage, prove to have an advantage over vehicle computers. One very evident, let's say, element is connectivity.
Yeah.
Let's say
Connecting workers.
Exactly. Especially considering once again how big the warehouse surfaces are to cover. If there are some spots that cannot be covered by Wi-Fi, let's say even in some open areas, let's say ports, yards, etc., well, probably Wi-Fi is not the way to go there.
Okay, yeah, but I mean, then we had the 5G probably going to be replacing those kind of situations, right?
Exactly,
and then there is also where the tablet plays an important role.
Exactly. Because tablet is where you find the 5G, you find the wide area network connectivity. Other, let's say, clear situations where the tablets are becoming more and more popular as a replacement of the vehicle computers are, for example, we know that to be really productive, let's say the vehicle computer needs to be always on the move. So these devices need to be always on the move. Well, let's say, but on the other side, let's say if you have some, let's say, gaps, some breaks, let's say in the productivity cycle of a device. Well, a tablet, you are not using on a vehicle computers, you undock it, you take it out and you use it, for example, for other activities, for the flexibility we were mentioning before, for some picking of items, for damaging, for documenting the damage of some goods, for supporting docking and unlocking activities. This is another scenario, I would say, where tablets, thanks to their flexibility, have their way. And the last probably example that I would make of situations where tablets are having an advantage over vehicle computers, fixed vehicle computers, is probably, I said that vehicle computer proved really to be very reliable, have low failure rate on the field, but ironically, let's say, really it is the break-fix scenario of one of these vehicle computers is always something that can be very complicated to fix. If we think of the way, for example, vehicle computers are installed, with all the cables that in case of a failure needs to be, taken down, removed, disconnected. Removing a tablet for service or to mount it on another forklift is way easier than removing, of course, a vehicle computer. So that is the other, let's say, opportunity, use case, which is really driving the migration from vehicle computers to tablets that we cannot deny. And if I can add a further comment on this, it is not a case, for example, that one of the tablet families that we are launching now in these weeks at Zebra, the ET60, has dedicated accessories for forklift mounting, for using them on forklifts, even in some specific use cases, for example, refrigerated areas. They really, we are really completing the portfolio with a range of accessories developed by our own to support these applications.
That's a good point. I was going to ask about refrigeration because quite often in our industry, a device has to be specified for use in cold store spaces because certain pieces of technology, particularly screens and batteries, have to be specific to that space. And I've never seen a tablet designed for use in cold stores. I can't think of any manufacturers that have done that. And again, it speaks to the very early conversation we had about identifying the problems that the users of these devices are going to have and tailoring a device so that it can manage that space.
And there are in particular two elements that becomes critical in a refrigerator space. One, for example, is the display, and typically, so in these tablets that we are developing specifically for forklift use, we have a heater on the touch panel, which prevents this issue from, let's say, from becoming critical. The other component which becomes critical, typically in a refrigerated environment, is really the battery, the performance of the battery. And once again, here we developed some dedicated accessories that can, let's say, avoid and prevent this the battery performance to impact, let's say, the forklift usage.
Excellent. Okay. Well, I think you said everything that we need to say on the warehouse. I cannot imagine more elements to discuss about. So before we finish, I think we should also touch a couple more opportunities that we are, let's say, having in the tablet market. One, probably and very evident, could be also the government. When I say government, I mean everything which is in the public sector. Probably healthcare. If you want to put healthcare inside that, of course, it's not only inside the public sector, but healthcare is one of those, but also the education, but also the field service within the blue light services, And I think those are also areas, specifically healthcare, where the tablets are really gaining a big value add, for the users. Correct?
Absolutely. And I think if we look at the absolute numbers, absolute revenues generated in these segments, probably government is the biggest segment here, with also a growth rate year after year, which is important. It's around 6%, which is relevant once again, considering that starting from a revenue standpoint, the number is bigger. So a 6% of a bigger number is something which is growing year after year more and more. From our industry report, and also from for example, if we look at the white paper that we developed together 1 year ago, I think we have reported that over 90% of the surveyed public safety and government agencies that we had conversations with are planning really to adopt, to embrace more and more mobile technologies in their government teams. I say mobile technologies overall, broadly, not just tablet, because, well, for some use cases, of course, touch computers might be appropriate. For some other use cases, tablets are definitely the way to go. For example, let's say in-vehicle use. Of course, when we talk about in-vehicle use, we all have in mind our GPS support when we drive or something. But in-vehicle use can be also, for example, in an ambulance. To support some more critical operations, or can be, for police, for having access to real-time data, etc. Well, for in-vehicle use, the vehicle is moving all the time, so maybe the small user interface of a touch computer cannot be the appropriate one. So a bigger user interface, such as the tablet one, is the one that typically we go for. Side point, I mentioned real-time access to data is absolutely critical, can be life-saving in this scenario, no?
Absolutely.
So, and for example, when we look at tablets, we find some accessories which we do not find on the touch computers that are intended to support really real-time applications. For example, we have these options that we call pass-through antenna that we use when installing tablets on vehicles that allow really the connectivity signal to flow and to be exposed, let's say, through the antenna that are installed on the roof of my vehicle to make sure that I have always 99%, not to say 100% of the coverage sensitivity that I need really to be always real time, saving data, saving likes, and being updated, let's say, to the to what is happening, let's say, throughout the flow of data.
Yes, because I mean, all basically everything you are selling, you're telling us, on that is really common to any single industry. And you are talking about data protection, etc. I mean, but if there is a place where this is more critical, is healthcare, right?
Absolutely.
And then we are talking about the smart hospitals, and this is where this technology is really impacting. So I think that's probably one of the areas within the, if you want to call it, within the public sector, but also in the private sector, where the tablets could be much easier getting introduced, right?
Yeah, I think the information flow within the hospitals is kind of key, right? When you're waiting for test results, things like that. So bedside care and access to a patient's record, historical or live, is a critical piece of that. And we've seen in case studies real-time gains in the level of service provided to patients at hospitals as a result of access to that level of information, whether it's tablets mounted on the carts that are moved around, so checking medications, etc. It really does play an important part, I think, in the future of that. And to the point of having specific devices for specific environments, obviously the type of chemicals that devices are exposed to within hospitals is much harsher than you would find at home or even in the warehouse for the most part, I would say. Yes. So having devices that are covered in these antimicrobial and disinfectant suitable plastics is key. And obviously, we spoke about one of the Zebra tablets earlier, and there are specific devices designed within the Zebra portfolio that are suitable for those kind of disinfectant chemicals.
Absolutely. Normally, I mean, the interesting thing is that if we look at the papers, the sector-specific studies developed for the healthcare sector, it has been since the year more or less 2000 that basically the advantages of, let's say, touch computers and tablets in the healthcare environments have been emphasized by the expert. And I like the concept a lot because tablets and PDAs, touch computers, are defined as a force multipliers in this environments. A definition that probably could extend to all the government sector that we just mentioned, let's say, where really any of these device allows a small team even to handle situations where there is a peak of workloads, and probably we all have under our eyes what happened during the pandemics.
Absolutely,
where the workload was absolutely unmanageable and
best example. No. Okay, so thank you very much. I think it's time really to finish this podcast. I think we have brought into the table, many aspects of this technology, which, as we started, saying, it's being considered a declining market, but it's been proven after this conversation not to be a declining market. In the contrary, it's a real opportunity. But let's go to a final part. We cannot stop without talking about the key elements on this technology, the key takeaways I want to highlight. And if I had to mention one, I would go for flexibility. I think that's really a key element, an instrumental element in the adoption of tablets in the industry. How about you?
I fully agree, and I do think that flexibility and versatility are probably the words that we have repeated more and more frequently over this podcast. Because of we mentioned of the wide range, for example, of configuration that the tablet concept by itself covers, spanning from 7 inches to 12 inch, 14 inches tablet. I think, if I think over what we discussed during this podcast, one other interesting element is probably something that we have never mentioned because in our head it is obvious. Yeah, we have never mentioned that tablets are by nature 7 inch to 12 inch 40 inches display, but needs to be touch interface, and the fact that they are touch make them, let's say, so flexible, so customizable, because you need an interface with 3 buttons. On the tablet you develop and you design it. You need a full software keyboard. Once again, on the tablet you have it, and this is, let's say, what really makes probably one of the big difference between the tablet customizable interface versus the old laptop concept, rigid interface. And then we mentioned, let's say, I mentioned now software keyboards, but let's not forget, for example, some of our tablets come with, as an accessory option, with the offer of a 2-in-1 keyboard, a keyboard that
is a key takeaway, because accessories are really offering a wide range of solutions that is very, again, related to flexibility, that makes you very, very easy adopting this technology for different uses and cases.
And this is probably the other keyword that we have repeated mentioned so many times during this webinar: wider choice of accessories.
Yeah, I think all of the things we've talked about really, for me, mean that it's a solution that is easy to adopt, because you have a wide range of accessories, a huge amount of customization options. The software can be tailored, but also everyone's comfortable using them. We said right at the very start, we probably, between us, we have like 5 or 6 tablets in our homes, and we're using them every day, and we're not unique in that. The society is used to using these devices, apps and that type of technology. So training, usability, Absolutely. People want to use them, so let's let them.
Absolutely. Okay. So I think those are important elements. I think we have already enclosed, where the opportunities are for this market. Again, not dead, on the contrary, alive and kicking, I would say in English. Sorry for my English. So Leo Borgini, thank you very much indeed. Dave, colleague, thank you very much indeed for joining us today. Thanks. More to come in next days, but till that comes, have a great trip back home. Thank you.